Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming to hang out on Entropy Emporium tonight. Oh my god, I'm not muted. Stop talking. Jesus Christ. I was not muted in stream watching it, and I do not like hearing my voice played back to me like that. That was terrible. Anyway, thanks for coming to hang out tonight. We love it that you're here spending your evening with us. A couple of channel things first and foremost. We are raising money for the Palestine Children's Relief Fund in Gaza. Um, they are boots on the ground. They are doing what needs to be done. It's really important work what they're doing. Um, I want to take a second to acknowledge that it's not the only important work that's going on right now. There is a lot happening in our world, particularly if you're living in the US, but not just if you're living in the US. Around the world, things are happening that are really out of our control. Just a reminder, community is going to save us. Show up for yourself, show up for each other. Do the best that you can to lean into the people who love you and show up for the people that you love. It is the only way we're going to make it through all of this. That being said, one of the organizations that we highlight here is Palestine Children's Relief Fund for the work that they are doing in Gaza. That continues to be a challenge over there. So we ask that if you cannot donate, that you advocate, continue to speak up and speak out. Be sure to show up if you are able to, um, and just support as best you can. Uh, on a much less serious note, the other thing is that we do have a Discord. If you are inclined to come hang out with us and yell about what we do and yourself and your pets and the cool meals that you make, and I don't know, we yell a lot. We yell about a lot of different things, but it's a really good time. It's just a space that we are a bunch of nerds getting together and loving on each other. Obviously, I'm in a little bit of a sappy mood tonight, so like I'm just talking about all of the love that I feel right now. But it is a really good space. It's a lot of fun. So definitely come and hang out if you are so inclined. Finally, some content warnings for this game that I am posting in chat if you're somebody who visually needs to read along. Godkiller Desecration deals with mature topics which can include graphic depictions of violence, death, betrayal, gaslighting, sex with fade to black, religious themes, drowning, self sacrifice, manipulation, and mind control. If this is not your cup of tea, that's totally okay. We have our safety tools on this side of the screen, and all that we ask is that you take care of yourself. So take a step back if you need to. Um, Definitely give yourself space to enjoy what you want to enjoy. And if that is the story tonight, we would love to have you here. And if that's a different story on Entropy Emporium, we look forward to seeing you hanging out for that story as well. I believe that those are all of the things. So now, most importantly, I'm going to hand it over to my God Killer for the last episode to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Kian. I am JD, pronouns he, they, and I am playing our god killer Talon, pronouns any, all.
And my name is Kian. My pronouns are they, them, and I am playing the GM for this game. So I get to play everybody else in this story. Um, Before we pick up exactly where we left off, I want to take us a bit further out. You were seeing the birth of a god, but you were not the only one experiencing this. The entire cradle, every god, every mortal knows that something has just happened. And even if they don't know what, they can feel the spaces around them changing. There's a ripple of energy that comes through as every god across the entire cradle, Kalaris, Actos, Nihea, Simpson, all of these gods you've never met and gods that you know very intimately, look toward the first cradle, this giant chasm in the earth where gods claw their way after being made of mud and dirt and given some sort of divine energy. They claw their way to the top and they step out into the world for the first time. Everyone turns toward it, and there is one god, Kalaris, who is looking eagerly and waiting for that light to be snuffed out. There is another god, Actos, who is watching curiously, and there is one mortal waiting by Kalaris' side, looking and watching as Starling thinks about their best friend, very far away, wondering where they are, what they're doing, if they're safe enough to witness something truly amazing happening. And then we zoom back in to Talon, standing at the edge of this chasm. As Talon watches, one hand slowly comes over the edge and latches onto the dirt, followed very closely by the other, and something begins dragging itself over the edge. This thing is massive, large enough that you have to take a couple of steps back to give it space, as slowly this brand new god takes one step and then the other outside of the first cradle, and it swings its giant head around. It's a humanoid for the most part, but instead of a head, it's a giant chasm of amethyst. There are two amethyst horns curling out from its head, and its entire body is a murky gray color. And it looks around and it's looking and surveying the entire landscape around it. And then it looks down and it sees Talon at its feet, watching. What is going through your head right now?
Talon has seen so many gods in these past few days, and yet the birth of a god can only be described as awe-inspiring. Talon is just looking up, and there's a moment where they think, this god is so beautiful. And then they think, what am I going to have to do?
This creature looks at you, and for some reason, there's no telling because there's no expression that you can read. So there's no real telling why. But this creature begins to sink down slowly and make itself smaller and smaller until it's about eye level with you. It's about your shape, it's about your size. And you've seen gods do this before, manipulate their bodies to become humanoid and be more on your level. And it looks at you and it kind of turns its head one way, turns its head the other, seems to be observing you and taking in this human. You are the only mortal, you are the only entity in this space. It has nothing to look at but you, and you feel the weight of its gaze without eyes actually looking at you. You feel the weight of its attention. As Kaikrin, this brand new god, looks at you and says very simply, "Who are you?"
There's a few beats of silence as Talon considers what to say. They're not sure that they've made a choice. They're not sure they're ready to make a choice. But Talon knows he has to. And so when Talon answers, she says, I'm the God Killer.
Kaikrin sits down. And it's heavy. It sounds a lot heavier than it looks. There is a weight to this entity. But they sit down and they're looking up at you. And they say, "My name is Kaikrin. Have you come to kill me?"
And that swings the pendulum a little to the side. It shakes Talon's resolve, and they choose to sit down as well, sitting across from Kaikren, and say, that's what I'm here to do.
Kaikren reaches out, kind of runs their hand over the grass that's along this edge, picks up a fistful of dirt, watches it slip through its fingers. "I've never experienced the world before. Is this what everything looks like?"
This is what part of the world looks like. It's not the sum total of it, though. There are cities and water and trees. There are people other than me.
I don't think I understand what you're saying. Does everyone look like you?
No, no. Each person looks like themselves. They look different. There might be eye color that's the same, hair that's the same, but very rarely in the exact same pattern.
Kaikrin reaches a hand out toward your face, and it's not hesitant, but there is a level of confusion as they reach out, and they don't touch you, but they hover their hand close and kind of move their hand over your face as though mapping your expression, your features. And they sit back and they go back to kind of touching the dirt, feeling it between their fingers. They rub their hands together. Does everyone look like me?
No, I have never seen anyone who looks like you, not any of the other gods, obviously not any of the mortals. You
You
look
know my
you
siblings then.
I've met a few of them.
And did you kill them too?
Talon lowers their gaze, and there's almost a sense of shame that can be felt. And she says, "Not all of them."
How did you decide?
If I'm honest, I don't think I ever really did decide. The first time it happened, it was kill or be killed. The second time, it. This will probably sound confusing to you, but while it was my hands that did it, it was taken out of my hands.
So there are siblings that I have that I'll never get to meet.
Yes.
And it's because of you.
Yes.
First of all, thanks, Will, for the chaos point. I appreciate it.
William.
You feel a shift in emotion. And Kaikrin stands up very abruptly, turns around once in a circle, looks down at you, and is not starting to grow, but the edges of them are starting to move as though it wants to take a different shape. And they're not quite sure what shape they want to be in. Their hands kind of morph and twitch. Claws start to grow, and then feathers, and then it looks like hooves. And they're staring down at their hands, watching them shift and change. And they look to you and ask, "What is happening?"
I'm not sure. I've never seen a god be born.
I don't think I have either. Do you think I deserve to die?
I don't know that anyone deserves to die. I don't know that anyone deserves to live either, now that I'm saying that, but I don't know. With the other two gods, I saw them do horrible things to people. I saw one of them do things that hurt people that I care about and love. I saw the other hurt people for fun. But you haven't done anything. You just have the potential to cause harm.
When you say potential, you hear an echo of that word in your head, in Colaris's voice. Yes, potential. You have potential. And the words are kind of starting to morph of who has more opportunity here. You start to hear Colaris demanding, kill this god now, and is pushing and pulling and urging you to action. And then everything goes quiet, and behind Kykrin, across the way, you see Actos. This time they're holding a lantern in their extended hand, still covered in that cloth, that sheer cloth. You can't make out any features. The wind is blowing, and so that cloth is moving back and forth. They're holding the lantern in their hand, and it kind of sways with the wind. They don't do or say anything. They're just watching and waiting. Kykrin sits down very quickly, hard enough that the ground around you shakes. The pebbles and rocks kind of skitter away. They sit down, and their face starts to shift from this chasm of amethyst, this horned figure. As the horns slowly disappear, the chasm folds in on itself, the amethyst being swallowed up, and you're looking at yourself very abruptly. Because yours is the only face that Kykrin knows. The only shape that it could possibly take. Kykrin looks at you and says, "You killed my siblings. You hurt them. Do you think you deserve to die?"
And Helen exhales slowly and is silent for a few moments before saying, "If I'm honest, I did find myself wondering the exact same thing when I said that you have the potential to hurt people. I thought about the fact that I have the potential to hurt people. I have hurt gods. I've. And she pauses for a moment, but then continues and says, "I believe at least that I've hurt you by taking that opportunity away from you to ever know those siblings."
You see your face, your own face in front of you, shift from confusion to anger, frustration. There's a brief moment of happiness, as though Kykrin is trying on emotions, figuring out what fits in this moment, what makes the most sense. You feel something tugging you forward. This thread that seems to go from the base of your throat. It's pulling you forward in that way. And across the way, next to Octos, you see Ditlan, holding the other end of this thread, slowly pulling you in his direction. And he's smiling. And he looks eager. He looks anticipatory. Like there's something that he wants and he's on the edge of. And he gives the thread one hard jerk. And it pulls your body into Kykrin and pushes you both over the edge into the chasm. What do you do?
Helen tries to grab for anything they can to stop this fall from happening.
There's not much in a space that creates gods, but there are footholds and handholds. Trying to make sure that there's not a move for this. And I don't think that there is. Roll me a d6. On evens, you find something. On odds, you don't.
That's one.
You are free falling down this chasm. Kaikrin is falling with you, but he's looking at you. He's got his back toward the base of the chasm, and he hasn't stopped looking at you. And he reaches out and he slowly takes your hand and says, "If I deserve to die, I think you do too." And pulls you closer to them. Do you say or do anything?
I think Talon just has the very human reaction in that moment of, like, well, he doesn't try to pull himself free from that grasp. There's no attempt to do that. They just look at Kaikrin and say, I don't want to die. Please don't let me die.
Your voice changes when you say that. There's that hint of fear in it. Kaikren can see that in your eyes and mimics it. Doesn't quite mock it. It's not angry, but it is mimicking and saying, I don't want to die. And Kaikren says, I think that this is fear. I think that I'm afraid. Snaps their fingers and you're back on the edge of the chasm. No longer falling. Still holding Kaikren's hand. And they're digging their hand into yours, and the fingers have kind of got these sharp edges to them, not on the tips of the fingers, but along the insides of them. And they're digging in to hard enough that it's starting to draw blood. And your hand is aching. You can feel that scratchiness of it. Hykrin says, what can I do to convince you to let me live?
And Talon is still trying to catch his breath from that way too close to near death experience. And that means that they don't exactly answer that question. Instead, they ask Kaikren, every god is a god of something. What are you the god of?
Still holding your hand, Kaikren turns around, looks over, sees Octos and Dietlon on the other side, is looking at them, still wearing your skin, still wearing your face, and turns back and says, I think I'm the god of new beginnings.
And what will you do with that power?
Very simply, Kaikren looks at you and smiles, and there's something about the smile. It's off a little bit, and you notice that your features are a little bit shifted to one side or the other. Your face isn't quite lined up the way that you know it is whenever you've looked in a mirror. And Kaikren says, I think I will eat. And that mouth begins to open, slowly but surely. Before we continue, I've sent you a message in our chat really quick for you to take a peek at. Um, Slowly, this mouth begins to open, jaw unhinges in a way that you've seen before, kind of parts into different sides. There are teeth all along the edges of your own mouth, and for all you can guess, it looks like Kykrin is going to try and bite you. Do you do or say anything?
Talon just scrambles back at that point, just tries to yank their hand free and put as much distance as he can between himself and Kykrin.
I would consider that acting impulsively. When you act impulsively, describe the emotion. The GM will tell you something you didn't notice as they answer one question. What emotion is driving you right now?
Absolutely fear.
The sheer terror of possibly being bitten by this god. Would you like to answer what advantage do you seize or what trouble hits you hard and fast?
I think I'll answer what trouble hits you hard and fast. And what I'm imagining the answer to that is with these hands having those edges, I don't think Talon really can rip her hand free, at least without causing significant damage.
I think that makes a lot of sense. You're tugging and you're pulling, and you feel that your skin is shredding in Kykrin's grasp. Do you keep pulling or do you stop?
Talon keeps pulling.
It yanks and it pulls away at your hands and your fingers, and you can tell that's going to scar. It's not going to stop bleeding anytime soon. But the advantage that you seize is that you have shifted enough that when Kykrin goes to snap, they bite air next to your head. It's quick enough and close enough that you can feel the wind. You can hear the snap of their teeth when their jaw snaps shut, and all of those different folds of it come together into one spot. But they haven't bitten you, and they pull back and they look down at their hands and they see your blood on their hands, on those sharp spiked edges. Why did you do that?
Why did you try to eat me?
Because I'm hungry.
Okay, if you're trying to convince me not to kill you, that's not the way to do it.
But I think I'm supposed to try to eat you. I think that's what mortals do. They they become food.
No, 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 no. That is not what mortals do. That what makes you think that's what mortals' purpose is?
I don't know. I know that I'm hungry. I know that I see you and I think food, sustenance. There's something I think would be fulfilling if I tried to eat you.
Is that the only thing you can think of that would satiate that hunger?
Kykrin stops, seems to really consider that question for a moment, and they slowly turn and they're surveying the land again, and they go in a full circle and they come back to look at you. I don't see anything else that would work.
And I mean, I don't think Talon thinks before they say this, and they just blurt out, well, of course, not here. There's nothing here. And then pretty much covers their mouth with their hand, shocked that they may have remotely suggested that Kykrin start finding sustenance elsewhere.
And I think Kykrin, you have started to catch on that Kykrin is a very simple minded creature. There is not a lot of complexity to this. So they draw one dot, they draw a line between one dot and the other, and they make that connection and say, but there's more somewhere else. And they begin to move, and they start to walk. What are you doing?
Running after them.
They're not moving very fast, but their strides are long. They take longer steps than you are able to, so you do have to do this kind of half jog to keep up, sort of stumbling every couple of steps. Kykrin doesn't look at you, continues on with your face, with your body, and keeps walking. Heads in a vague direction. You know that there are cities that you haven't explored. You stopped at kind of these small towns, these small areas where you were able to get a night's rest. You imagine that there's probably one relatively close, and you are slowly walking toward one. Are you saying anything?
As Talon is doing what they can to keep pace, they say, "Is there anything I can do to convince you not to do this?"
I don't think so. And Kykrin begins to run. And it is impossible to keep up on your own legs. You're a little bit of space away from your bike, but it is impossible for you to keep up alongside them. Are you still trying to run? Do you go back for your bike? Do you stop?
Talon goes to get their bike.
You jump onto your motorcycle. You're able to keep pace pretty well, but Kykrin's steps are heavy, and they're slowly getting faster and heavier as their body begins to expand again, still wearing your face. And you can see a village coming up in the distance. It's pretty small, probably 20 or so houses, maybe one or two other community like structures where people can gather. Sprinting along, I'm going to use my chaos point. Kykrin reaches that village before you do. Does not stop. Is bigger than I think probably the tallest house. And people are screaming. They see a god. They know that this is something to be afraid of. Instinctually, they start to run into their homes. And Kykrin stops and looks around in confusion a bit and starts to shrink back down. The next person that runs past, Kykrin just reaches out, grabs, and pulls toward them and bites in the shoulder and neck area, bites viciously, and begins to gnaw at the bone and the flesh. There's blood everywhere. It's dripping all across the ground here. It's dripping down Kykrin's face, around down your face, as you are watching as you maul somebody and consume them. Slowly, that body dwindles away into nothing until there's just small bits of flesh scattered around. What is Talon thinking right now?
There was a moment, it was just a flicker, but when Kykrin said that they were the god of new beginnings, there was a moment where Talon thought, this could be a good thing. This could be beautiful. The grief that Actos talked about could be the grief of change. And maybe this isn't necessary. Maybe this is a god who would not even need to be reasoned with, that this is a god who would want to witness joy and happiness and the pain of change, but all of those things. And there was even a moment where after Kykrin tried to bite them, they thought, they just don't understand. It's a natural impulse to hunger. Maybe they can learn. And in witnessing this death and destruction happen in front of him, he knows what choice he needs to make.
Kaikrin's actions are still simplistic and in that way don't make sense. It is very simple violence, but it is violence nonetheless. I would like for you to roll to recognize a god. There's a specific reason that I'm asking you this. Roll 2d6, add 1 for each true statement. You're in or near their domain. I would say yes. You're familiar with their gospel. I don't think so, because you haven't really had a chance to learn Kaikrin's gospel yet. It'd be bad if you didn't know. I would say yes, this is something that you need to understand. So roll 2d6 and add 2.
Okay, that is a 7.
Okay. You get a clear interpretation of the omens, and you get to ask a follow-up question of your choosing. Kaikrin said that they are the god of new beginnings. And obviously, this destruction doesn't quite line up with that. This god of beginnings causing so much violence and ending. You thought about how this could be a god of change. And you're not wrong. Kaikrin is not searching for new beginnings, new life to consume. Kaikrin is looking for those on the edge of a big change, something that is going to change their life in an instant and permanently change it. And while the threat of death and being consumed is certainly something that will permanently change someone's life, the bigger change would be the decision to kill. And you recognize and understand in that way that the biggest change that Kaikrin could consume is you. Because it is such a big decision to decide to kill something. Kaikrin turns to the next mortal that it sees. This one, a younger feminine person, hair kind of done up in 2 braids that wrapped around each other, dark hair. They've got deep brown eyes. They're holding a small child with them. And as Kaikrin goes, they turn and try to shield this child with their body as they're holding this child close. Are you doing anything?
I think Talon makes an attempt to stop this, and what they would like to do is drive their bike as close as they can, throw it into a slide, and let it slam into Kaikren.
Ooh, I love that. Um, would you say that, well, there are 3 different moves I think we could go with here. Acting impulsively, inflicting violence, or challenging someone dangerous. Which one feels most accurate to you?
I think I'm gonna say inflict violence.
Okay. Roll 2d6, add 1 for each true statement. They wish you harm. I'm gonna say because of the simplistic way that Kaikrin thinks, in this moment they don't, because they found something else to consume. You're desperate. Are you desperate?
Yes.
And is it personal?
I think we could say it's personal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Roll
They're
2d.
wearing my face. It's personal.
That's very valid. Roll 2d6, add 2.
All right, that is an 8.
Okay. This part of the fight ends on your terms. You throw the bike into a slide. You roll off, kind of covering your head. You didn't quite have time to put your helmet on, so you're covering your head, making sure that you don't take any serious damage. And the bike slides and slams into Kaikrin's feet. And even though they are running toward this creature, one arm extended, already grabbing onto that mortal, they turn and almost go full horizontal and slam into the ground, rolling away, riding with the bike across the dirt. The bike continues to rev, the tires continue to spin, but Kaikrin has been pushed away from this mortal. What do you do?
Talon's putting himself in between Kykran and the mortal.
You stand there. This person is screaming in fear, in confusion, in terror. You're not quite sure. But they turn around and they look at you and they're holding that child close and they look at you and they look at Kykran. Two identical beings, except that one is covered in blood. And you can see it in their eyes in the brief glance that you take over your shoulder, that when this person locks eyes with you, the fear that they have of Kykran extends to you, and they are afraid. And they begin to run. They scramble backwards, so they start to sprint away. Kykran is slowly getting to their feet. It's kind of moving its arms, its limbs are bent in ways that they should not be. Some of the bones seem to have jutted out, and they kind of just look where one of their bones has kind of splintered out of their arm. They put a hand on it and slowly push it back down into its place and kind of twist their arm over it, lock it back into place. Their body slowly retakes its shape as your body. Why did you do that?
Why did you do that?
Because I'm hungry.
That isn't the way to fill that hunger.
Then what should I do?
First of all, you should stop, but that's the first step. We can figure out there are many things that gods eat, not just people. Preferably not people. Some some get nourishment from other things, and we could get you nourishment from other things.
Like what?
Well, I'm still putting pieces together and trying to figure this out, and it's a little hard when I have the threat of you eating people hanging right over me, and I'm having to decide whether or not that means I need to kill you or not. I would rather not kill you, but if you're going to be killing other people, I'm not going to have another choice.
That's how you decided then? You chose which lives to save?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I did to an extent. I killed some gods, but not others. I was called a coward for not killing one of the gods because they were killing people. But I'm also not just going to stand here and watch you tear apart people who have done nothing to you just because you're hungry.
Time slows down a little bit, and you see Actos walking forward. And Kykran doesn't seem to observe them. And she comes forward to you holding that lantern still and goes to walk past you. And when she is shoulder to shoulder with you, her facing one direction, you facing the other, they say very quietly, I told you that people would grieve. Do you understand now?
I believe I'm starting to, but I still don't know what to do.
You spoke earlier of not having a choice. I'm giving you that choice now.
I can't just stand here and let them hurt people. I I can't be a coward again.
And I think you've already made your choice.
And Talon just nods.
Is there anything that would be bringing comfort to Talon right now?
I think the main thing that would bring them comfort in this moment is probably just thinking of Starling.
You are thinking about your best friend, and you can see her face in your mind's eye, and smiling, laughing, just being Starling, being this over enthusiastic, curious, excitable person. And then you see her face covered in blood. You see them gnawed apart. You see them ripped into pieces. And Actos slowly turns around, circles, and stands in front of you, and they are no longer holding the lantern. They are holding a crossbow, and they hold it out to you.
Talon takes it.
You can make it suffer, if you'd like. Actos doesn't say anything else. Simply walks away. And time starts to move again. You see there are people still cowering, slowly trying to move back from this scene unfolding between them, these twins facing each other, one now holding a crossbow that for them appeared out of nowhere, the other still kneeling on the ground, looking up, bloodied and beaten, but not at all concerned about their injuries. What do you do?
Talon readies the crossbow and aims.
You lock the bolt in, bring it up. Kaikren watches you. They have no idea what a crossbow is. They have no idea the damage that can be done with this. And you take aim, finger on the trigger. And I think that is a perfect place for us to take our break.
I should have known. I should have known.
Always watching the clock closely. God, I can't talk tonight. Hang out. We'll be back in about 10 minutes. Pet your pets, take some meds, drink water, eat a food, all of the fun things. If it's still sunshiny where you are, go touch some grass. We'll be back very, very shortly. While I find the button. Where's the button? Button. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Um, when we left off, Talon was just loading a crossbow bolt and aiming directly at Kykrin, this new god who only knows consumption and curiosity about the world around it. Kykrin looks at you, wearing your face, covered in blood, smiles a bit at this new contraption that you're holding, looks curious, and begins to walk closer, and gets close enough to where the bolt is pressed right up against their chest. And they begin to reach out and start to touch this thing in front of them. What is this?
It's something new.
What does it do? Can I eat it?
No.
Then what does it do?
And Talon takes a breath and just says, I'm sorry, and goes to pull the trigger.
I think that counts as inflicting violence. Uh, roll 2d6. Um, do they wish you harm? Not in this moment. Are you desperate?
I think after seeing that vision of Starling, there is an element of desperation.
Okay. Is it still personal?
Yeah, with that vision and Kygrin still having Talon's face, both personal.
Okay. Roll 2d6, add 2.
That is a 6.
Okay. Suffer 2 strain.
Mm-hmm. That puts me up to 5.
We will handle that in one moment. Oh, I'm so excited. um, we will handle that in one moment. You go to pull the trigger, and this divine crossbow, gifted to you by a god, locks up very unexpectedly. Kykrin still does not know what is happening, but you do go to pull the trigger, and it does not shoot. And they continue to kind of touch this crossbow, run their hands across it, figure out what exactly it is. They touch the end of the bolts. Their finger comes back with a new drop of blood as they realize that it's very sharp. This thing will hurt me?
Yes.
I don't think I want that. And Kykrin grabs the crossbow and begins to squeeze, and you can hear the wood creaking underneath it and the metal starting to bend. You have suffered your 5th strain. Choose whether you succumb or persevere. Which do you do?
I think there is a large part of Talon that wants to just succumb to give in because this is too much. But having seen that vision of Starling and knowing the costs that will be there if they fail, that makes them push through, that makes them keep going, at least for now.
You go to pull that trigger, and you don't realize that it's with that hand that has been cut up by holding Kykrin's own. And you feel a kind of throb of pain, and you wince, and you look down at your hand, and you realize you have been bleeding this whole time, and you have lost a lot of blood. And you're feeling the effects of that now. If you choose to persevere, roll 2d6. Let's go ahead and see what that looks like.
That is an 8.
Okay. On a hit, clear one strain, but also reveal one to your opponent as you fight through the pain. A weakness or flaw they can exploit, something you desperately desire, or your true hidden intentions. So you go down to 4 strain. Which would you like to reveal?
The weakness or flaw that Talon reveals in that moment is how long it took him to pull that trigger. That there was still enough hesitation. She is not 100% locked into this. And there is still that wavering that is happening.
Kykrin looks at you, can tell that you're starting to feel a little bit foggy in the head with all of this blood that you've lost, and sees that expression on your face and mirrors it on their own. And you see that anxiety and that tension and that hesitation written on your own face. You see it reflected back at you. And Kykrin says, "You don't want to hurt me, do you?"
No, I don't. I never wanted to hurt anyone.
But you feel like you have to.
I have to. There's no other choice.
Kykrin looks down at the crossbow that they've slowly been crushing in their hand. The metal continues to bend and the wood continues to splinter. Why why were you here when I woke up?
Because I was here to kill you.
But why? Did you decide to do that on your own?
No, no, I didn't. I was sent here to do it, but it was clearly the right choice because look at what you've already done. And he gestures towards the blood and screaming and horror that is surrounding them.
Kykrin looks around. Um, looks confused, looks concerned. But I thought this is what I was supposed to do.
Who who told you to do this? What makes you think you have to do this?
I don't think I understand how mortals work. I don't think that they work the same as the gods do. But these, and Kykrin kind of gestures to where another bone has kind of been bent out. I feel things in these. I feel it deep in this body that I'm in. And the thing I feel strongest is hunger. I feel I need to eat. Do humans not follow those instincts?
And Talon says, "Of course we follow those instincts, but not like that," and then stops. Not exactly like that. We hunt, we fish, we take the lives of things smaller than us, so actually, exactly like that.
I think, and you can see understanding and logic and thoughts. You can see the wheels starting to turn in Kaikrin's head as they are slowly putting together one thought after another. I think that you think mortals are better than gods. If you're allowed to do that, but we aren't. And I don't think I agree with that.
I don't think that I agree with that either. I don't think that mortals are better than gods. I just think there is something different for me as a mortal when I see a cow butchered for food to feed us, and when I see you tearing into someone the way you just did. But it's not so different.
Would you feel this way if I was consuming another god?
It would feel different only because I do not have a personal relationship with the gods. It would feel different because, at least with the gods, you are on the same level in terms of power. Mortals are ants beneath your feet. You could do anything to us, and we couldn't stop you.
Who sent you here to kill me?
The god that I serve.
Kaikrin looks at their hand and seems to be concentrating, and you see their hand kind of dissolve through the crossbow, excuse me. They watch their hand do this, and they seem to be thinking and concentrating, and they take a step, and the crossbow disappears through their chest. And then you realize that they've got this strange intangibility about them as they keep walking and they push forward and they slowly pass through you. And as they're passing through your body, there's a deep set chill that you get. It's hard to breathe, it's hard to think, it's hard to focus. And that is not the blood loss, that is a god for a very brief moment merging with your own existence before that moment passes. I think then that I will simply find the god who sent you to kill me and perhaps eat them.
I have a problem with that.
You seem to have a problem with a lot of things.
You're not wrong, but also, what will you do after that?
I think we can find that out together.
I think I'm not okay with that because you will be around many people that I care very, very deeply for.
And also a god that sent you to kill me, that made you make these decisions and had these decisions taken away from you. You don't want to kill that god?
Talon deflects and says, like I said before, I never wanted to kill any god.
You've been talking back to back this whole time as Kaikren had passed through you. And Kaikren turns and circles back and stands so that they can see your face. And your expression has kind of been blurred and seems to kind of drift in and out of that strange amethyst cavern that was their face before they assumed your appearance. And then they look to their right, and you see Actos silently watching. Dietlan is nowhere to be seen, but you see Actos silently watching. And Kaikren simply says, I think that you should take me to meet this god that wants me dead. And you remember when Actos compelled you to kill Bayon. And it starts to feel like that. That urge to obey and simply go along with it. Do you try to fight it?
I think there is a moment of trying to push back with that vision of Starling still fresh in Talon's mind. But there is something in that question that was asked, that question of, do you not wish to kill that god who was put you in this position? And it isn't that Colaris forced Talon down this path. It is a bunch of small things isn't the right word because none of them were small, but they were normal. They were typical. They were just the experience of being an angel fell. Talon thinks about the harsh words Colaris had regarding Starling, despite how devout Starling is and how much she has consistently given in their worship of Colaris. He thinks about Eden walking as a puppet, much like Dietland's puppets, and that being just an acceptable consequence for pushing back against Colaris's authority. And then she imagines Starling in that role, being puppeted in that way. And any resistance fades away at that point.
You can't see Actos's face, but you can imagine there's a smile on their expression. And she slowly lets her power bleed into you. And you turn and you start to walk. You start to walk back to Angelfell, the city of ledges, where you started this entire journey. You walk for days, and every step that you take, Kaikrin is there taking another step right behind you. And they ask you questions, and it is curious about the world around it, and you answer them and you don't, and sometimes there's just silence. By the time you make it back to Angelfell, your feet are bloodied and raw. You have not had a moment to rest. Exhaustion is settling deep, deep, deep within you. but you have been able to continue on, compelled by this force stronger than you. Kykrin stops at the edges of Angelfell and looks around. And you had taken these paths, whether by your own volition or compelled by Actos, you had taken paths that kind of kept Kykrin out of the way of people, just in case something happened, just in case they lost their focus. You realize that this is the first time Kykrin is going to be around people again other than you. Last time it ended in a massacre. But Kykrin stops and looks at Angelfell and takes in all of these different people. People are stopping and looking at you. They recognize you, but they don't understand why there's two now. Kykrin's face still kind of blurred between the Amethyst Cavern and your own. Do you say anything to anybody as you're walking into the city?
Absolutely not. Talon just keeps their head up and eyes straight ahead. The only time their gaze shifts is if they look to Kykrin just to make sure they do not look like they're about to get hungry again.
And they don't. Kykrin looks very focused, still curious, still inspecting the world around them. As people walk by, they kind of reach out and they gently brush their hands across people's shoulders and pet people's hair. And it's unsettling to watch them observe everybody. And people are unsettled by being pet by this entity that looks like you. People are starting to keep their distance because they can sense that there's something different about this other entity that's here, this other humanoid. And you walk and lead Kykrin directly to the temple of Kalaris. The compelling that you feel, this ease of walking that you have settled into, simply because it felt out of your control and it was easier for the most part to let Actos take the reins, finally leaves you once you are on the steps of the temple. What do you do?
Talon stumbles a bit as the exhaustion from the journey, the state that their body is in, is a little more registered now that there isn't that force compelling them, but he keeps moving and goes to walk straight for the doors.
You approach the doors of the Temple of Echoes and pull them open. And inside, you see that it is full of people standing and watching and almost waiting for you to come in. They're all faced toward the main entrance. And far across the way is Kalaris, this humanoid figure with a many pointed star as a head, still smiling. Standing beside them is Starling. And Starling looks hopeful, perhaps. And as you walk in, you can see their expression morph into happiness, into excitement. And they go to take a step toward you and then another, and Kalaris reaches out and grabs their shoulder and pulls them back as Kykrin walks in behind you. Do you guide Kykrin all the way to the altar?
No, when Talon sees that there are people in there, and especially when her eyes fall on Starling, she freezes. Because, well, there is a part of her that believes she should have known. They were not prepared for this. They were not prepared for whatever conflict is about to unfold to not only involve potential collateral damage, including their friend, but also be witnessed by his friend.
You think about the last time that you were in a temple with two gods, with mortals surrounding them, and the absolute destruction that took place. Kykrin looks at you as you stop and looks at you, looks up at the altar in the distance, and looks back at you and says, "Is that the one who wanted me dead?" And their voice echoes because it's silent in this place. It's almost like nobody is even breathing. Everyone's holding their breath, waiting to see what happens. But they look at you, waiting for an answer.
And Talon steels themselves, straightens their shoulders a bit, and just nods.
Wearing your face, Kykrin turns and faces the altar. And Kalaris, you can see from a distance that smiling face. There's something wrong with it. It is as close to angry as a permanent smile can get. And you hear in your head, "I thought I told you this god couldn't walk."
You did, but it has.
Kalaris scoffs at that, and their hand moves from holding Starling's shoulder to slowly wrapping around Starling's throat. And they ask, "Does this life mean nothing to you?"
That life means everything to me.
Then finish the job.
And Talon goes to take that small pocket knife out of their pocket once more.
You know that if chaos breaks out, Starling will be right in the middle of it. Starling will be the first person hurt or worse by these two gods going at it. Kykrin stands a little bit in front of you, mostly turned away from you, watching Kalaris. Do you say anything before you go to strike them?
No, Talon hesitated last time. He's not going to this time.
Okay. Roll to inflict violence once again. They do not wish you harm.
Nope.
Are you desperate?
Yup.
I think we can safely say it's personal.
Yup.
Okay. 2d6 plus 2.
Alright, that is an 8.
Okay. This part of the fight ends on your terms. What does it look like when you go to stab Kykrin?
I think Talon doesn't go to stab. I think Talon goes to slash Kykrin's throat. And I think he just comes up behind him and does it in one quick motion.
You reach over Kykrin's shoulder. Very easy to do as you are the same height right now. And to everybody around you, it looks like you slash your own throat. Blood begins to pool, and Kykrin turns to you and looks confused, not in pain, and says, "Why did you do that?" And their voice comes out clear, and you have this thought that this god, this very fresh god, who is at its most divine, having barely existed in the mortal world, might be a little harder to kill than previous gods. Do you say anything?
Talon once again says, I'm sorry, I don't have another choice.
Because of Colaris.
Because people I care about are going to be hurt.
Kykrin nods, turns back to Colaris, raises one hand as it slowly extends. You're pretty far from the altar, and it's hard to see. You don't have exactly a clear shot because you're kind of looking over Kykrin's shoulder. But it looks almost like fear on Colaris's face as that arm slowly reaches out. And you see Colaris's hand growing tighter and tighter on Starling's throat, and it almost looks subconscious. As though, as mortals do when we're afraid, we slowly start to tense up and start to hold tighter to whatever is in our hands. And it looks like that's what Colaris is doing as that hand slowly gets closer and closer. And just as it's reaching Colaris and seems to be going directly for Colaris's face, Kykrin shifts their whole body and grabs the arm of the hand that Colaris has around Starling's throat and squeezes and continues to squeeze. And Colaris begins to yell in pain, and even from a distance, you can see that Starling cannot breathe in this moment. Do you do anything?
Talon is absolutely running towards them.
You begin to sprint. People are parting ways. Nobody is panicking because everything is happening so slowly. Something is making a god scream in pain, and that is very unnerving. But people, it's almost like they don't know what to do. They're so unsettled by everything that everybody is very still in this space. But as you run by, they're making space for you to pass. It's very easy. You get to Starling and Colaris. What do you do?
Talon is trying to pull those fingers off, is trying to get Colaris's hand off of Starling's throat.
I think we need a move here. And it could go a couple of different ways. I'm thinking either manifest a miracle, wield a power. This could be challenge someone dangerous. This could be tempt fate. Do any of those sound accurate to you?
I'm thinking. I'm thinking maybe tempt fate.
Okay. When you tempt fate with your actions, say what perilous feat you're trying to accomplish and roll 2d6. What is your goal? Is your goal to save Starling? Is it to hurt Colaris? What are you focused on most right now?
I think if I had to put it into words, like, well, saving Starling is the goal, I think in essence it would be at least momentarily overpowering a god.
Okay. Um, Add one for each true statement. A skilled ally is lending you a hand. I would say yes to that.
I was going to say literally.
Yeah. You have no other options. I would say yes. You're far from any god that wishes you harm. Absolutely not.
Absolutely
Polaris
not.
is furious right now. Roll 2d6 and add 2.
Okay, that is a 7.
Okay. You get through it mostly unscathed, and the fates spare you for now. What does this look like when you go for this hand around Starling's throat? Are you prying the fingers? Are you trying to hurt? What does it look like to overpower a god in this moment?
I think it is just that sheer desperation, and it is like pulling the fingers back one by one, and it is the fact that as Talon does that, Colaris doesn't just tense those fingers again. That is where the overpowering piece comes in, where even though it takes a bit, the hands become completely clear and Talon is able to yank Starling away.
Starling takes in a gasp, clutching at their throat. They're breathing heavily as they finally can breathe clearly again. And they're holding onto your hand tightly. What, Talon, what's happening? And Colaris is still screaming in the background, and you see them rearing their other hand back, ready to strike.
Talon shoves Starling behind him so that he is at least between them and Colaris. And that is all they really do, is just try to move Starling a few more steps away to get her clear from this.
The first strike that Colaris makes, it's almost like their hand moves faster than sound. They connect with Kykrin's jaw, still wearing your face, and there's a crack of sound a moment later. And that is when people begin to move. It is instantly chaos. People are running and screaming. Kykrin takes the hit, and it almost knocks your face from their body. As that amethyst cavern comes back, those horns starting to slowly grow out and curl and continue to grow longer than they were before. As Kykrin bellows in pain, still squeezing, Colaris's arm snaps in Kykrin's hand. Kykrin lets it go. It is when you watched Bayon and Bebium fight, it was about their powers. It was about this divinity that both of them carry. This is a mortal brawl right now. This is two people, really. It's not two gods anymore. It is two people clawing at each other, just swinging wildly. People are getting hurt in the process. People are caught in these exceptionally long limbs that are swinging out, slowly throwing them from place to place. You can see that people are dying around you as this is happening. I am going to roll a d20 to figure out what happens. That's a pretty d20. I shit you not, that was a natural 20, which is absolutely bananas. These gods are fighting, and it is taking no time at all for Kykrin to overpower Colaris. And then eventually, Kykrin rips Colaris's arm free from his entire body, grabs the side, this many pointed star, the side of Colaris's head, kind of cranks it to one side, and that amethyst cavern grows teeth and becomes a mouth and just is this gaping. I was gonna say gaping maw, but that's a Critical Role thing. If anybody watches Critical Role, that's what I think of. Uh but this cavern, this amethyst cavern grows teeth, all of the different shards of amethyst growing to a strong point as Kykrin bites into Colaris's shoulder area and slowly begins to grind their teeth down, gnawing and thrashing and ripping. Colaris is still fighting, is still screaming in pain, but for now has stopped swinging. People are no longer actively being attacked by what is happening as Colaris is forced to just hold on to Kykrin, and Kykrin is only focused on consuming once again. The gods are cannibals, and you have seen gods consume humans. And it is nothing like watching one god consume another in this way. It is vicious, it is base, it is slowly gnawing away at this humanoid form that Colaris has assumed. Kykrin um Kykrin continues to eat. This, I lost my train of thought because of chat. There was spam in chat, and I lost my train of thought. Kaikrin continues to eat. This ichor slowly falling down around them. That becomes more and more red, more and more viscous, more and more like blood, as Kalaris slowly has his divinity taken from them. There is nothing left when Kaikrin is done. Every single inch of Kalaris has been consumed. Do you stay in the temple while this is happening?
Yes, and at first it is because Talon. At first it's because Talon is frozen, but then it is because he needs to know that Kalaris is gone, that is not going to be a continued threat for him. And then it is ultimately because she needs to know what she just allowed to be created as a brand new god has consumed another god.
Over time, there are people who celebrate that Kalaris is dead. And there are people who grieve. And none grieve more than Starling. None are so heartbroken as... Hey, Raiders! Welcome to the finale of Godkiller. Godkiller Desecration. We are just about to wrap things up, so you have shown up just in time. Starling grieves. Starling is absolutely shaken to her core by the death of Kalaris. The temple does not stay empty for long. Kaikrin takes up residence there. You see, over time, people begin to worship this god of new beginnings. Because that is what people know, is to worship a deity, to find something divine and flock to it. It gives them strange comfort. And you can't help but think back to Isaac, who was so angry at you for not killing Musin, this god of anger, who had told you that they were the most devout as a way of survival. And over time, it is the only way that you can survive, is to bring things for Kaikrin to consume. This new fate that Talon has been gifted once again, this new job, this new role, mostly, I think, out of fear that if you stop, Kaikrin will decide what to consume. How does Talon feel about this?
Talon understands it as the only real choice that they have. They never wanted to serve any god, let alone become the most devout. And yet, here they are. And here they have been as essentially a pawn moving back and forth between different gods. And in a lot of ways, it feels no different, but all the different because he no longer has his friend. He no longer has any real connections to others. And there are days where he dreams of just getting on his bike and leaving and never looking back. But then she remembers what will happen if she does, what she is there for, what her role is, and that all of the sacrifices along the way need to be for something. And if that is keeping some level of stability and peace, then that is what they have to do.
And I think that is not perfect, but a very heartbreaking way to end Godkiller Desecration.
I agree.
My heart weeps for Talon and this ending that we have created. And perhaps there is some comfort along the way. Perhaps something happens that brings Talon a bit of joy to hold on to. Perhaps Starling can forgive Talon bringing about the death of Kalaris. But I don't think that that is our story to tell right now. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us for these 5 episodes of Godkiller Desecration. This was a conversation JD and I had a long time coming. As soon as we discovered Godkiller, we knew that we had to run it, we had to play it. It is a beautiful system. Um, I will hand it over to JD. Let us know who you are, where we can find you, plug any sort of projects that you would like to plug.
Of course. So, hi, I'm JD. I can be found on the internet, mostly Blue Sky at this point, at JD Not Jason Dean. I'm usually found over with Live from the Apocalypse, where we fundraise all year long for a variety of good causes and aid organizations. So, you can find me as an organizer, storyteller, and player there most nights when I am not here on Entropy Emporium. And sometimes I make some appearances elsewhere, but the best way to find out about those is social media. I don't think I'll plug anything tonight just because the list gets a little too long, so I'll toss it back to you, Kian.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Kian. My pronouns are they, them. You can find me on the interwebs at uptight-chiffon, uptight_chiffon, depending where you're hanging out. I am mostly on Blue Sky now as well, but I'm on Instagram occasionally. Feel free to go follow me there. I will not plug my stuff, but I will talk about Entropy Emporium, this channel that you are on. This is a queer led channel. We are here to promote safety in gaming and tell really fun stories with people that we love. A couple of those stories. Every other Tuesday, They Call Us Villains, our Horror Masks actual play, GM'd by JD. Every other Thursday, God Complex, a Girl by Moonlight actual play, GM'd by Will. Every other Friday, Weird Wilds War, a 5e actual play, GM'd by JT. And that is all that we have on the schedule right now because Godkiller Desecration is done, which makes me so sad. I've been so honored to tell this story with you, JD. Thank you so much for trusting me with this. Keep an eye out, guys. We are going to have a couple more things coming up. Um, we're going to be announcing some really interesting games. One in particular that I think the cast has kind of talked about, so I will let you know. It is called Star Shard, and it's going to be very, very good. So keep an eye on promos. Follow us on social media. That is where you'll hear about stuff first. We are going to send a raid over to Sword and Key. I'm not sure what they are playing tonight. I think it's Horizon's Call that they are running right now.
That
Um,
sounds right.
so be sure to let them know where you are, who sent you, what it is that you do. Talk to them in chat. Make sure they get credit for the views. And we will catch you next time here on Entropy Emporium. Goodbye, everybody.